Welcome to the People's Colloquy. My name is Anthony, aka Scare, aka Zorro, aka Ngalagata. I'm here with Thabo.
Hello, Thabo, Frank, aka Bravo, Makanye, Khutlile. Thanks.
And once again, we're here with Dr Tshepo Mvulane Moloi. And we are going to be closing out on the decolonization discussion. We want to touch on where we stand now, what the solutions are, and what each of us can do to contribute to trying to change the situation. So we're going to go straight into the question, and for Tshepo, I've got to ask, the very architecture of elite universities in South Africa, it's intimidating, it's uninviting, it looms over a person. South African designs were lifted from British institutions which were taken from Rome and Greece before that. What about creating African institutions from the ground up? Is that a possible solution, and what are the hurdles to that?
So, thank you for bringing me back on. I think we should not rush into projects before we understand the dynamics involved with these projects. Before we talk about what is the way forward to realize decolonization, we need to first understand what should we avoid in the process of attempting to decolonize. One of those things, and I'm coming to architecture, is what this book, the title of this book is Decolonization. Right? It's not even, like, they don't even go and speak about many things. They simply tell you it's decolonization.
That's what it is.
But you open this book, it's by two white men, and you open it and you want to get the definition of decolonization. And the very first page, they define decolonization as a technical and rather undramatic term for one of the most dramatic processes in modern history: the disappearance of empire as a political form and the end of racial hierarchy as a widely accepted political ideology and structuring principle of world order.
Structuring principle of world order.
Now,
Whose order is that?
what we don't do is this: we don't define decolonization the way that I have just read from this book. When you say now, for example, the idea of the architecture, our institutions are built as, and you must say the word, mimicry. We mimic the West. This is a metaphor for everything that goes even beyond the architecture, even the contents, and even the ideologies that we find in those houses. They're extensions of your Oxfords, Cambridges, Harvards, and the like. Now, I said, before we start to even imagine beyond the colonial architecture, we need to first understand how historically what we are dealing with came about. So if you understand, for example, that the English universities in this country, Rhodes, UCT, Wits, if you understand that they're an extension of the power of the British,
which still exists today,
it will then make it very easy for you to make the link with Oxford, Cambridge. If you understand the Afrikaans universities, Stellenbosch as headquarters, Free State as a branch, Rao as a branch, Pretoria University as a branch of the headquarters, which is Stellenbosch, you will then understand that the link you make is with Germany, Netherlands, and you will also understand why, historically, the way this country was colonized is exactly what those citadels, this is what I call them, of whitewash Eurocentric knowledge, why that is what they offer in there. Now, what you call University of Cape Town today, its original name was the University of the Cape of Good Hope. That's the original name. That is the first university, at least in this modern way that we call university, in this country. The first PhD on my wall over there, the doctoral education in South Africa.
Yeah.
We are told that the first PhD in this country comes from that university in 1899. Your question should be, hang on, if the first PhD was from the Cape of Good Hope, who supervised that candidate? Because it can't make sense that there was no PhD holder, but the guy is graduating with a PhD. So this is why I'm saying we don't ask the questions that we need to before we start talking to solutions, before we start talking about the way forward. Can we first decipher the present, so that at least it assists us when we talk about the way forward?
Yeah.
With this in mind. So it is very important for us to know and understand the field of philosophy, which is where thinking is a priority. It's shocking when you look at the history of the philosophy in South Africa. It takes you to the history of the colonization of this country. So the University of the Cape of Good Hope becomes the oldest city in South Africa. So Cape Town, according to our history books, is said to be the oldest city, which hosts the oldest university. The second oldest is Stellenbosch, which hosts the headquarters,
The hub
of the Afrikaner community, with their branches through the Great Trek. That's how they then would form their branches, and this is what those institutions stand as. Now, take that in mind, and then think about a book like a book which is written to commemorate the brilliance of Professor Eskia Mphahlela's thoughts, where they are trying to follow what he was trying to tell them. This is Professor Makgoba and Professor Tshepo Mvulane. In 2006, the minister at this time is Professor Kada Asma. And what they try to do in this book is they bring all towards an African identity of higher education. You are asking me the question about the way forward, as if this is a new question, as if in 2015, 2016, Fees Must Fall, we're asking something that was new. Already these guys came together at what was called Vista. At this time, Professor Tshepo Mvulane was the VC of Vista campus, today UNISA, so Sunnyside campus. And Professor Makgoba was with, he had just taken the position at UKZN, at what would be UKZN, because he's the one who was in charge of the measure. Together, they took out this book, where and you will see Eskia Mphahlela's, they put Eskia on the cover.
there.
But it's them that wrote it. Now, the title tells you towards an African identity of higher education, which means they understood that the headquarters of the English University is UCT, and the headquarters of the Afrikaans University is Stellenbosch. They understood that if these guys were dictating the education curriculum, which was in the interest of their people, then they wanted to then follow what Professor Eskia Mpahlela was advising so that they could consider that to be applied in the universities which they are now in charge of, as the first black VCs of the institutions they were in charge of in the country. So your question should be then what happened? I mean, if that was in 2006,
14 years
and
on.
then FISMAS 4 happens in 2015, 2016, it's back to what I said earlier. They have been busy with transformation instead of decolonization because they failed to decipher what exactly the phenomena of decolonization was. Right? So what we need, with this background in mind, what we need to do is participate in what is called an epistemicide exercise. Like I said about epistemic rupture, epistemicide is basically the violence of the knowledge process that, you know, but it's basically a killing of challenging, interrogating it, but, you know, because up to now, whatever we may refer to as South African black knowledge or knowledge from black people is a myth. And that's why African philosophy becomes important. Decolonization is an exercise of understanding and participating in exercises where we look beyond the colonizer's mindset and we actually begin to grapple with our own. Not to say that we're going to be romantic about our own stuff, we're not going to be, but to begin to say, hang on, if there is something called indigenous knowledge systems, by this we mean stuff that has to do with our people.
Yeah.
E.g., cultural stuff like sangomas and how they, all these things, right?
Yeah.
Then we need to begin to say, but hang on, how is it that this is not taught as a course at the institution that I'm in, and yet this is part of my community? Why is it that when we enter these side titles of white education, it's just Europe? They're teaching me to be European and to be, you know, to be accustomed with European culture and all that. But when it's our stuff, they need to put the word indigenous in front. Why can't it be just knowledge as well?
Knowledge,
yeah,
also.
sure. Because
Do you see that? And so I have a problem when you keep on saying, no, we need to champion indigenous knowledge systems, but when it's their knowledge, it's just knowledge. When it's our stuff, you have to say indigenous.
It needs to be qualified somehow.
Right?
Why do you have to qualify it?
So these are the things that I'm saying to you. We need to first, as a people, have the dialogues that are going to first assist us to understand our status quo as intellectuals, as scholars, as non-scholars. Only then can we then say, now that we know what we know, can we then propose? So for example, even this notion of building buildings, put a fence, lecture halls, even that we need to start saying, but why are we continuing the very thing we say we're fighting?
Yeah.
We are now doing it.
We're going to build an amphitheater.
Right? Why?
Why we need amphitheaters?
Because that's them. That's European culture. That's not our culture. Right? So if we say that, then we need to then say who's willing to do the work on, if Egypt, for example, is said to be the mother of a lot of African antiquity and blah, 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 right? Who are the authoritative Egyptian scholars?
They're in the Europe area.
Who are you talking about?
No, well, in terms of the study of Egyptology.
So be careful when you say.
Where it first was where they first decided to say we're
So
starting to label what they did.
Are you familiar with the name Sheikh Anta Diop?
Diop.
Sheikh Anta Diop. This is him. Civilization and barbarism. Black Africa, the myth of reality. This is Sheikh Anta Diop. But more importantly, so that I make my point properly, blacks in science, and they came before Columbus. Now, the scholars I'm putting before you now, the ancient and modern, Ivan van Sertima, he has done work on Egyptian studies. But Sheikh, this is the guy who proved the theory that the Egyptians were black people.
Yeah.
He proved it scientifically. And he used anthropology, he used chemistry, he used radiology, he used philosophy and linguistics. Today in Senegal, they have named the University of Senegal the Cheikh Anta Diop University after him in his honor. But let's not forget, this is the same guy when he presented his PhD on the theory of the Egyptians being black, they failed him. They didn't give him that PhD. But then ask who was the committee. It was white, male, French people. So how the hell do you think they were going to agree to his findings? So the main thing that you ask, we do not think about decolonizing our architecture. We don't think about decolonizing our knowledge without first looking at the review mirror of the people that have done this before us. What exactly did they do, and what's the backlash that they got, and the successes they achieved? What today can we say this is the outcome of that effort by that scholar and that scholar and that scholar? So it's very important that we are familiar with who should be the voices that we look to. So in our South African context, that's why a book like this, it shows you that it's the modern black VCs, but they're thinking about their pioneering thinker, not from white people, but an elder called Iskian Patlela.
So,
right?
Tshepho, what you're saying to me is that, in essence, it's educate before you innovate.
Right.
What should we be reading? Are these the books? Are these the books? So this is what we should be throwing ourselves into as scholars, as academics, as parents, as students. This is what we need to be looking at before we start to work on the idea of beginning to decolonize these institutions, beginning to take on the preschool, primary school, high school, and university structures, is to start here with the old knowledge, the original knowledge.
Right. So we can do it in two ways. There is the mainstream way, because of your constitution, which is, let's be open-minded, let's listen to everyone, regardless of their skin color, because, you know, people got constitutional rights, which is very liberal, which is problematic, and it's not going to take us far. We can do it that way. Or we can say, look, since this talks directly to us, it's our history and our ancestors that have been bastardized, it's our culture that has been affected. Therefore, we need room, we need space to just be on our own, to think, consider, engage. Before we can invite other people who, the other here in inverted commas, who are not like us, who are not part of us, who are not in our culturally, linguistically, and all of these things, right? Because there is no ways in hell. If you have been in this country in any meeting, us here, we're a classic example. What language are we speaking in this forum?
Influence, English.
It's English.
Right? But let's go and be a bit more ridiculous. Let's go to a meeting anywhere in a colonial space. If there's just one English person in the audience and all of us are black, what language is that meeting going to take place in?
English.
Now, if this is not power of the colonizer, even when they are absent, they're not even in our presence.
Yeah, it's
then
the same
what
thing
do
that
we
I wanted
understand by power?
It's like a well-trained
We're
somebody.
conditioned. We're conditioned. That's how deep our victimization is.
Yeah, actually, based on that, I wanted to read something from, it was written by Poka Liumi, right, where he speaks about decolonization, not on education per se, he was just speaking about decolonization as a whole. So he's got steps that he thinks that people need to follow so that they can reach that point of decolonization. The first step, he calls it rediscovery and recovery. And he says, so he talks about the influence, like you said, the extension of the colonizer, like Barrieta, the extension of who they are, like an extension of an Englishman or an Afrikaner, whatever it is. So he says that here that people who have undergone colonization are inevitably suffering from concept of inferiority in relation to to their historical culture / social background. It's the same thing as you just said. We want to accommodate, we think we want to accommodate the white guy, so that's why we speak English. But in essence, we are just an extension of that white guy. Our culture is gone.
Isn't it interesting how if you go to so-called non-English countries, coming from an English colonized country, if you had to go now to Senegal, black people's country, right? But they are francophone.
Yeah.
What language do you think they're going to speak?
French.
Do you think they're going to accommodate you?
No.
So,
but even them, they're an extension of a Frenchman.
Right. Take the same black Senegalese and let's see him in France, in Paris. Do you think they're going to speak his indigenous tongue from Senegal?
No.
Right. And do you think he has an issue with that? Because from home he's colonized.
Yeah, he's colonized.
So
already,
you know, why is he going to raise it at the empire? Because at the colony he's dealt with.
The head office now.
His dignity as a man, or as a Senegalese, or us as South Africans, as Sotho men, Tswana men, Zulu men, whatever, it's gone.
So let's come back to architecture.
So we need to rediscover ourselves, I guess.
Recently, Lwazi Lushaba from UCT made an example of, let's look at Guguletu, which is typically Guguletu, Langa, how those townships are just adjacent Camps Bay. So the lush, the green, the clean, you know, Millionaires Row in Cape Town. And if we now are to apply to Johannesburg, Alexandra Township is divided by a highway from Sandton, right? And we can go on with examples like this throughout the country.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Now, our universities are not in a vacuum. They are in particular communities, in particular cities, and homelands. Since the 1959 Higher Education Act, which then basically said University of Zululand, University of Venda, Limpopo, are for only blacks. And then in the cities, it was only for the whites.
The whites,
right? And I already spoke about Stellenbosch being the headquarters of the branches and UCT being the headquarters of. So it then tells you that they built these institutions with that political mandate in mind. So if we are to decolonize, we need to think that about these universities are not outside of particular communities. They are part of the community. So we need to think community-wise. You know, who are we building this institution for? And to serve who? To do what research for who? To serve what purpose?
Yeah, maybe doing fourth industrial revolution research where people don't have Wi-Fi, where people can't afford access to data.
Yeah.
What does it help?
But you are talking modernity now. I think we must not jump. I'm still at basic footsteps of, can we first understand that everything we think or imagine as a way forward, can we understand its implication beyond what we are proposing, both good and bad, you know, because there's nothing that's this is very complicated, right? In as much as I want my child to be able to write isiXhosa fluently and speak it, but I also want my child to be able to get a job, right? And I don't think that the company he wants to work for give 2 cents about his Xhosa and how fluent he's speaking it. You know what I'm saying? So these are very complicated things that we cannot be lazy about. We need to go into them in depth. And this is the kind of work we need to be committed to do for ourselves. Only then can we say this project is then genuine. Until then, everything is superficial.
But in modern day South Africa, how practical is it? What you just said now.
Well, I mean, it's this question of the architecture of the university, decolonization. I mean, if you were to think, how much of yourself are you really at this point in your life?
How much of myself?
Yes.
Well, percentage-wise, I'll say maybe about 30% of who I can actually become.
Okay, I'm not even going to ask you what you base that on. But if I were to ask you 3 generations in your family,
Yeah.
will you be able to go there? 3 generations.
3 generations, yeah, sure. 3 generations. Ke mama e le gore e tla ke tle after yone ntatemolo mkgethe and then ntatemolo fezela.
No,
And
bro.
then
Let me help you. Do you know that as black people,
yeah.
there are 4 ancestors that are looking over you?
Okay.
Do you know that, first of all?
No, I don't.
So
I just know that there's ancestors that are looking.
So you don't know that.
Not for. I don't know.
Now, let me give you the formula for how do you know which 4.
Mm-hmm.
The formula should be your immediate grandfather,
Okay.
because he's the father of your father.
Yes.
Your immediate grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
the mother of your mother.
Yes.
So notice how I'm talking gender.
Yeah, I see.
Your father's father,
Yeah.
your mother's mother.
Yeah.
These 2 are non-negotiable in your ancestral line. They are looking over you. They are with you.
Okay.
Then these other 2 become complicated.
Okay.
So I will talk about myself.
Okay.
So I know that in the 3rd one, it is my Koko. Koko,
Okay.
right? On my father's side.
Okay.
She is the mother to my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 4th one is, and this, yeah, is complicated, is a white man.
Okay.
And this white man is not Afrikaans, nor is he English.
Mm-hmm.
He is, I wanted to say Dutch. He's Belgium.
It's Belgian. Okay.
So, how do I know this? I had to dig and find out about myself.
I'm very interested in the Belgian part.
It's not as complicated. Basically, what happened, I told you my story. Born in Tanzania, because of my parents not being with me. The family politics on my father's side is that this she did not want me to be adopted by my grandparents.
Okay.
She's a sister to my grandmother, this
Okay.
lady, and she weds this white man here in South Africa.
Okay.
And because of apartheid, they couldn't basically be woman and wife,
Okay.
husband and wife, and so they left to go to where he comes from, which is Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
And when they get married that side, she begs my mom that let her be my godmother until mom is done, blah, blah, blah.
Yes. Yes.
Mom doesn't do that, so mom keeps me in Tanzania with the old lady she left me with.
Mm-hmm.
So she never had a kid.
Mm.
And so the husband dies.
Mm.
When he dies, he promises her that he will, her wish is that nothing will happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
So this is how he becomes my ancestor. I have never met him. I've never met, and you know, including this Koko that I'm talking about,
Yes,
who was
you've
never met her
him,
too.
yeah,
But
sure.
because of the way the storyline goes. But you see, I did research about myself,
About yourself, yeah.
before me, what happened, blah, blah,
Yes,
blah.
yes.
So I understand that also this is what informs my, so these 2 are straightforward. But these 2 become your story. You need to know your story,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So we have 4 people who are, and now the trick becomes, you need to know them by name.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are with you. You like it, you don't like it. You know them, you don't know them. You need
They are with me.
So,
Okay.
and that's how you become. Mphohlela speaks about the process of becoming.
Yes.
So this is where, if anyone had to say I'm wise, I'll tell them, no, all that has happened with me is that I opened myself up to actually wanting to know stuff that I could never be taught, or was my own parents could not tell me what I'm talking about myself.
Yeah.
Because they're colonized.
Mm.
Right?
But yeah,
So let me pause
exactly.
there.
That's the cultural part that you lose during the process of colonization, that you need to rediscover and reclaim.
Yeah.
To
So
decolonize.
because everything that I've said now becomes controversial in this way of colonial education, the point I'm making when I make this reference is that our things, whatever they are always going to be up for contestation. They are always going to be up for debate. They are always going to want to for you to bring evidence. because they have indigenous in front of them. But when it's the colonizers' knowledge, there
So
is no
that's
contestation.
So
There is
then
no
now, when
contestation.
it comes to the whole process of, or the thought of decolonizing education in South Africa, ka go ya ka wena, what is it that we need to do?
First of all, I wouldn't say decolonization, I'd say knowledge.
Okay, knowledge. Decolonizing knowledge.
Because education
Knowledge,
itself
Knowledge, yeah, sure.
already.
It's only limited. It's limited. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Right.
It's limited. Yeah.
So yeah.
That's
so
the
first,
first change for the day.
right.
yeah.
Okay. So decolonize knowledge, and
Decolonizing
to
knowledge, yeah.
decolonize knowledge, you need to understand power. So in the literature, there's three things: decolonizing of knowledge, decolonization of power, decolonization of being.
Mhm.
These three all form part of what you want to talk to when you decolonize. Because from the knowledge, then you are able to address the power
yeah.
dynamics. From the power dynamics, you are able to address you now. Because these two have informed you.
You, yeah, as a person. Yeah.
And so when you have addressed these three levels, only then can you begin to say, now I'm comfortable to engage solutions, way forward proposals. Until you've done that, everything you're going to say is going to be problematic. It's going to be modernity, it's going to be coloniality. It's just going to be problematic.
So now, based on what you just said, so you just to kill something. I know that I'm going to share politically, in the political sphere, government-wise, those three things.
Look,
Or try
maybe this is the only time I'm going to be liberal. You know, because I think we need the responsibility that comes with knowing more than the other guy is that you need to be humble enough to basically understand what he is a problem or they are a problem. Therefore, you are going to hurt yourself if you expect anything more coming from them. So the best thing you can do to deal with them is to assist them, to advise them, to try and show them or suggest, but don't fight them, because you are not going to go achieve anything. You might make them look bad, you might expose them, but the thing is, the thing that you're trying to achieve, you will not get it with that approach.
But in the state that we're in now, the government doesn't listen to anyone. Like a simple thing as like freeze must fall. They didn't listen to those kids.
That's why I'm saying to you.
Because I believe if they would have listened, if they had listened, they would have done what the kids needed, and that I believe that the country need.
I'm not going to speak as their spokesperson, but I'm going to speak in their voice and in their defense. They would argue that we have listened. Why do you think in the institutions, suddenly the universities had to do a review of their curriculum?
But what came out of it?
Okay, that's another conversation. But the point is,
And
their argument to you
and the
would be
tuition
that.
fees are still high.
Okay, so
Well, they go up.
remember, even the notion of fees. What the hell has fees got to do with decolonizing anything?
No, I was talking not from decolonization. I was saying the government or the state that doesn't listen to the people.
Well,
I don't know if the people have asked for decolonization.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. No, and okay. You said that you need to maybe assist the state or offer advice or anything like that.
Right.
But then I'm saying, what happens in this case whereby the state doesn't listen to anyone? Well, you try to do that, but the state doesn't listen.
Okay, so that's why Kiri, we can play that cassette, and it's gonna take us to a logical conclusion of conflict, violence, and all that. No? But at the end of the day, if that's not where your energy is, if your energy is, I'm still seriously interested in the focus, the solution, the way forward, how can we resolve? Which you need to also open yourself to the fact that you might not even be able to realize it in the next 10, 20,
Sure.
hell, maybe not even
the
in your
next 2,
generation.
3 generations.
If you are open to that, I think you will make a very constructive talking partner. But if you are talking this language of now, which is how we were talking in protest, and we, by the way, we're saying this, and if you ask us, the way I asked my one of the scholars that was presenting as a member of management at UJ, I said, so how do you imagine a decolonized University of Johannesburg? And she looked at me and she said, that's a story for another day. The point I make is this. Even you who is demanding for a decolonized university, if you were to be put on the podium, microphone in hand, you have 5 minutes. Please tell us how you imagine a decolonized university in your country. It will be very interesting, the things that you're going to say. Right?
Well, for one thing, like the guys who were working on this podcast, most of us, as I told you before, we're workers.
Right.
We laborers.
Right.
We work behind the offices. We do that thing. We're not.
I'm unemployed.
Well, we were.
Right. So the point I make here is, it's also interesting that earlier I spoke about intellectual dishonesty.
Yeah.
People speak as if they have answers, and when you're like, okay, all right, we hear your demand. Tell us then, because clearly we're not doing it. So tell us, and then maybe we will see. And here you realize that they start singing songs and they start making noise,
So
and you're like,
I've got a proposal.
Right?
I've got a proposal for you,
Tshepho. Yeah.
And it's a little bit of backstory for me as well that you might not know.
Yeah.
My path towards trying to figure out and see more about the world around us and figure out what's going on behind the curtains in this structure that we exist in. It was actually from the arts. It was novels, films, even I learned about Jean-Paul Sartre from an animated cartoon, an anime. How important is art?
Ooh. I mean,
is that a possible solution?
Ooh. I mean,
is it part of the?
This is the reason why I said earlier that if you go back and reread this scholarship of black scholars who are reduced to African literature writers who are writing fiction in South Africa and beyond. So Gungiwa Thiong'o, Chinua Achebe, even Pachela at home here, right? You have to start asking the question that was not asked previously. How much of this that is being referred to as fiction is actually fiction? Because when you read, he's down Second Avenue. I mean, this is a typical story of a black South African growing up in the township, going to a private school, all right, and then from private school he basically goes to a teacher's college because of the laws. He then teaches at Orlando, meaning comes back and teaches in a township because he was black. He was not allowed to teach in private schools. And the point is, how then do you begin to say this is fiction? How is this fiction?
It's not.
Right? And so, and I mean, we can make many other examples because,
We've not my child there at Tiongo as well.
But
that's not fiction.
I mean, UCT has got its problems, but one of them is they will always be haunted by the ghost of Achimafeche. Because when you think about what it means to be a black intellectual in South Africa, you have to deal with the ghost of, if you were anywhere else in the world, you will be celebrated. But where it matters, they don't even consider you in the same light with a mediocre white lecturer. Achimafeche got his master's and PhD from Cambridge University. As soon as he finished his PhD, UCT appoints him, and after they appointed him, the white colleagues said, "We're not going to work here if he comes and starts working here." White colleagues who don't have PhDs, white colleagues who are master's graduates. This guy is way senior than them. So the way the story goes is such that he eventually ends up working everywhere else in the world but in his country. He becomes a leading intellectual in his field, which was anthropology. This is Bongani Nyoga. He writes the book dedicating his life to Achimafeja. Bongani Nyoga is now appointed at Rose University. The point being, and remember what I said? I said we're not talking about emancipation, we're talking about liberation.
Liberation, yeah.
This is part of the series of Voices of Liberation. So part of your solution is we need to focus more on the intellectuals that are very clear in the category of liberation. Because we want a scholarship that is going to liberate us, not transform us, not fit us into some fake rainbow nation, which Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu were trying to imagine. That was their imagination, and that just shows you how much they were thinking. But we need to think about other thinkers who were thinking beyond the rainbow, who were actually thinking about the hard, complex issues that we would have to grapple with.
Wow, again, this was part 2. I haven't even made one joke. Like, this is so unlike me.
I'm just waiting for my spirit to return.
Very informative, though. Very informative. I wish that we could have like more of this.
But the final thing that I would like to challenge you with is just what is the role of community? So many institutions were created by elites. We've got scholarships that are funded by certain individual. There's still a big hero worship and following and looking for a leader to find. What is it that the community can do? What is it that the community can go and demand? Or should they be demanding anything? Or should the community just be reading, and then from there we know what questions to ask, and then therefore we can actually make a movement there, make some kind of a change, make some kind of a positive frame of thinking to begin with.
I'm reminded of Karl Marx, who speaks about the masses. I don't like this language. I think it's a very demeaning language. It's derogatory. It's disrespectful. When we talk about the community, for me, we're not talking about the masses. We're talking about me and you and the role we can play where we are found. We must, in our individuality, be relevant to the collective. A lot of people are celebrating Thomas Sankara. A lot of people are celebrating Amilcar Cabral as leading political activists who were able to achieve this for their respective countries of Burkina Faso and
Cabo Verde.
No.
They call it Cabo Verde now, Cape Verde.
What is Cabo Verde?
Amilcar Cabral. He's from the Cape Verde.
No. Pick up Cabral over there.
No, man.
Cabral is from Guinea.
Oh, yes.
Anywho, let's not get lost in that.
That's the point.
No, but he had some work that he did in Cabo Verde as well.
Yeah.
A lot of work. He helped a lot in Cabo Verde.
When you've been chased out your country.
Okay. All right. So the
He
point
did a lot of work in
I
Cabo Verde.
make with what you are raising, and I'm thinking about it where we are sitting now, where I'm saying there are schools which are named by people that the people, black teachers who are teaching there, have no idea who they are, and they're not bothered to know. We have a school here which actually started the 1976 uprising. It is not celebrated. It doesn't have our imagination in the way that Morris Isaacson is having it. And I'm saying, so many things have happened post-94 in South Africa. I missed a lot of confusion. But museums, festivals, literature festivals, even concerts, just music concerts with themes that talk to reviving our spirits and, making us commemorate, the greats that were, the guys that came before us. These are flickers of what we can do as a collective. We can bring scholars, artists, painters in one forum in a festival, and all of them can showcase their art, their skills, right? So this is a collectivity. This is where we put together whatever it is that you can contribute to the cause. Okay? We've had those things. The problem is we are not institutionalizing them at a level where they are grassroots. So, for example, we know about the Grahamstown Arts Festival. How elite is that event?
Super.
We know about
Just getting there.
Getting there, it's a
You know,
mission.
there, yes,
Just getting there, it's a
elite.
mission.
So we have German school here, Desha Schurler,
Yeah.
right? They always have their beer festivals and stuff like that. These guys show you that even in your country, we can build an island where we can still celebrate
And be
ourselves
comfortable.
Oh, so, yeah.
at your expense, right? So we need to start thinking like that. That okay, sharp, Sister Lokshin, we don't got no money, but we've got the people. Okay, what's the currency of our people? Alcohol. Okay, sharp. Why is it that we can't think around that? Because that's what draws them in, right? So let's think at a level of our people, because that's the only way you can talk to them and they can hear you. But if we want to talk above the people, and then we complain, but you see, they don't want to read. Yeah, but what language are you talking? You're not talking their language. You need to learn to humble yourself and understand the dynamics and be at their level. Then, and that is what fella.
It's our podcast. We make the rules, right? Everyone can.
An excellent example of this is Fela Kuti in Nigeria, right? I mean, we have examples that we can look at as frames to say, okay, who can we look at, and then we can begin to start thinking in that direction, right? So that's what we need.
Yeah.
If we can have more of such, we can begin to really have the direction that we want to go.
Any final thoughts, Tao?
Ali, good words.
So
You can wrap it up.
with that being said, like, comment,
Yes,
subscribe, read,
Yes.
talk to your people, listen to your people, get involved in your community. Shout outs to Steps, Baholi, Tato, and once again, Dr. Tshepo Mvulane Moloi. This has been an eye-opening experience, and I hope you will enjoy.
Please don't forget, you can catch us on all the socials.
All of them.
We got you. All of them. Not TikTok. Are we there?
I'm on we're on TikTok.
You're on TikTok. I'm
No,
saying
we
that-
are no the people.
What's
We are
wrong
on
with
TikTok.
me?
We're on TikTok. We're
yeah.
on TikTok. There's the link there. I don't know if you can see it there. The small T in the corner.
Oh yeah.
There's
Check
our
us on TikTok as well, Facebook, and everything. The
Twitter.
People's Colloquy podcast.
We out there.
Yeah, People's
Much
Colloquy
love.
podcast. Thank you very much. And like we had said, that we're gonna be bringing in people. Whoever or maybe or if you wanna come talk to us. Shapele DM, then we can sort out something like this and then rebu. Thank you.
Number one.
Salute.
Salute.